Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting of September 16th, 2024. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. As we have quorum present for today's meeting, I'd like to call the meeting of Public Works Committee to order. We'll start off with a message from our HSR team. HSR is celebrating a milestone anniversary this year, 150 years of service to the people of Hamilton. I think we would clap for that one. They are hosting an open house and behind the wheel VIP tour on Saturday, September 21st at the Mountain Transit Center at 2200 Upper James. This event will allow people to see behind the scenes, interact with HSR staff, and experience the transit system that has kept Hamilton moving for an impressive 150 years. I understand that the VIP tour sold out in a record time. All 140 VIP tour spots were booked after only a day and a half. That's amazing. All are welcome to attend the open house, meet the HSR staff and Hamilton Tiger Cat players and cheerleaders, visit information booths, win some HSR 150 swag, and check out the 150 merchandise for sale. Another bonus is that the fares will only be $1.50 on all HSR buses and DART trips on Saturday, which is a great opportunity to try transit and check out the amazing HSR service enhancements that launched earlier this month as part of year 8 of the local transit strategy. I encourage everyone to hop on a bus, join the HSR on September 21st to celebrate their rich history and bright future. The open house is from 11:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and more information about the event is available at hamilton.ca/HSR150. Congratulations on 150 years HSR. Now back to the boring stuff. Approval of the agenda. Elsie McIntosh, are there any changes?
The following changes were made to the agenda. 1, ceremonial activities. 1.1, HSR open house and behind the wheel VIP tour. Item 6, delegation request. 6.1, John Gaylor, Rockton Lions Club, respecting a permit to construct a path around the Beverly Community Center in person for a future meeting. Item 8, staff presentations. 8.2, transit maintenance and storage facility project update. PW 19006B. And item number 13, notices of motion. 13.1, Keith Neighborhood Collision Review and Complete Streets Enhancements, Ward 3, a request to waive the rules will be introduced.
Thank you, Clerk. And just before we move on to approving that, I got all excited about the 150 HSR and I didn't let anybody know who's here. So online, Councillor Tammy Wang, Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Matt Francis, Councillor Kretsch. I wait for the smile. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Jackson, Councillor McMeeks, Councillor Nan, Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Taddison, Councillor Jeff Beattie, Councillor Esther Pauls, and Councillor Craig Kassar. And we have staff with us today, and we do have, acting GM, Nick Winters here to take everyone's questions. Anyways, mover and seconder to approve the agenda. Councillor Pauls, Councillor Beattie, any discussion on the agenda as presented? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. The robots are giving us trouble. Everybody sit tight. You want to go with a thumbs up for this one, Clerk? All right. Okay.
Sorry, Chair. I just saw that there's an extra 13.2 notice of motion for rural broadband.
Yes, you can see that on your e-scribe, and Councillor Taddison will be introducing that, but it is not actually on the published agenda, as I didn't have time before the meeting.
Thank you.
The vote is up. And that carries 13-0. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to declare? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes of the previous meeting, September 3rd, 2024. May I please have a mover and second to approve the minutes of the September 3rd, 2024 meeting as presented? Councillor Tattison. Councillor Nan. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we're going to try the vote again. Councillor Jackson and Councillor McMeekin are thumbs up. And the vote is up. That carries 13-0. Thank you. Delegation request 6.1, John Geller, Rockton Lions Club. Sorry? Okay. John Galler, Rockton Lions Club, respecting a permit to construct a path around the Beverly Community Center in person for a future meeting. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the delegation request for a future meeting? Councillor McMeekin, seconded by Councillor Tattison. Any discussion? Councillor Alex Wilson.
No, it was just offering to move or second. It's all good.
Sorry, I didn't see you. Seeing no other discussion, we'll go to the vote. Sorry. Yes. Okay, so we are going to correct our mover to Councillor Alex Wilson, and we are going to remove Councillor McMeekin completely and let Councillor Tattison second it. Thank you, Councillor McMeekin. We'll go to the vote. That carries 13-0. Thanks, everyone. Moving on to staff presentations, 8.1, Accessible Transportation Services Eligibility Appeal Policy, PW 24051, citywide. Director of Transit, please introduce your presentation.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you Michelle Martin, Manager for Accessible Transportation Services. And Michelle will be providing an overview of the eligibility appeal process that has recently been redesigned and reviewed with the members of our ACPD committee. Michelle will walk you through the changes, and then if there's any questions on the report, we'd be happy to take them after.
Thank you, Director. Just waiting for Manager Martin to load her presentation, and then we'll get started. Whenever you're ready, Manager, go ahead.
Thank you very much, everyone, for welcoming me today to speak to you about our updates to the eligibility appeal policy. When we talk about eligibility for accessible transportation services under the legislation, we are required to have a clear and accessible appeal process. It's not working, so I'll try this. Sorry. Okay, I'll just use the trackpad. That's good. So the updated policy is part of the multi-year roadmap of critical steps to reform service delivery, as provided to the Audit, Finance and Administration Committee earlier this year. There was a 2020 Auditor General report on the eligibility process, and recommendation 14 of the Auditor General's report was to evaluate and potentially redesign the application appeal process. The related consulting report recommended contracting to a third party for the purpose of accessing a healthcare professional reliably as part of an appeal panel. Additionally, since 2021, ACPD Accessibility for Persons with Disabilities Committee review is required ongoing as each customer-facing policy is reviewed as per earlier General Issues Committee report in So for anyone with vision loss, there is an illustration on the right of this slide, which is a curvy road with various signposts marking the roadmap to improving the ATS eligibility process. And the image is the same on this slide and the next. The text to the left briefly describes each signpost. In Q4 of 2020, ATS provided management responses to the Auditor General's report on eligibility. By Q3 of 2021, we had the business case developed to apply more refined conditions of eligibility and eventually reassess existing client eligibility. At the time, Public Works Committee expressed the wish that ATS proceed slowly and carefully here. And I'm sorry, I'm going to expand the acronym for you. ATS refers to Accessible Transportation Services. So talking about more refined conditions of eligibility, these would also be supported by the ability to provide integrated first mile, last mile trips via specialized transit to well-serviced accessible transit hubs to access a frequent accessible HSR route. By 2022, we implemented more quality control over the application process itself. Q2 2022 was the first major update of the ATS application. Q4 of 2022 saw the reinstatement of third-party occupational therapist assessment when decisions about eligibility can't be made from the paper application alone. In Q4 of 2022, we hired an ATS supervisor with extensive experience supporting persons with disabilities. Workflow was established with the supervisor for supervisor oversight of each application processed to ensure consistency of decision-making. So this quality work is ongoing, and once ATS full access to the service database is restored, we will move to a random sample quality audit of applications and client profiles and a formal sectional internal process review. Q4 of 2023 saw our mail out of about 3,000 letters to the first group of inactive clients requesting updated applications with a deadline to close their files. This work is ongoing. It has been delayed as we recover from the cybersecurity incident, but anecdotally, we have a long list of return to sender mail with files to close and contact from some individuals who were not even aware they qualified for service. And that's because in many cases, on the old version of the application, clinicians were signing off and applications did not include an applicant signature. Q2 of 2024, we presented the updated appeal policy and related procedure and forms to the Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disabilities after extensive review with the ACPD in 2023, or specifically with the ACPD Transportation Working Group, to both ensure we are meeting our AODA obligation to communicate the appeal option clearly, to ensure we are compliant with all privacy and confidentiality requirements, to ensure we are well prepared for a possible increase in appeals if increased conditions of specialized transit are applied in the future. ATS is now targeting 2026, so we've moved it forward a little bit along with other things, for a recommendation report concerning eligibility reassessment and applying more conditions of eligibility. And this report will of course be informed by ongoing HSR work to improve service as the redesigned conventional transit network is implemented and as overall system accessibility increases on the HSR, and that is as it becomes more possible for persons with disabilities to use the HSR as barriers are removed. So this is not about pushing ATS customers onto a system they cannot use. Just checking that that's the right slide, sorry. So development of an updated appeals policy is critical to a fair and objective approach to any proposed plan to reassess the eligibility of any category of existing registrants. And it is important to remember that even if no reassessment of any kind is implemented, There is still the recommendation from the Auditor General to redesign the eligibility process itself and to explore opportunities for integrating specialized transit with the HSR. And this could include applying more refined conditions of eligibility for the subgroup of accessible transportation services applicants who may be able to access the HSR for part or all of some trips under some conditions. So when we determine eligibility, Accessible Transportation Services looks at two major areas. We look at the disability or medical condition that is impeding the functional ability to use the HSR or conventional transit, and this includes invisible disabilities and is not limited to physical disabilities. We also consider safety on specialized transit. For example, Accessible Transportation Services does not provide medical transportation involving anyone needing to travel on a stretcher, for example, nor will drivers look after medication or look after medical devices. Part of the application needs to be completed by a regulated health professional to confirm the information provided. And this can be a physician, nurse practitioner, registered nurse, physiotherapist, occupational therapist, regulated or licensed master of social work, and for residents of long-term care, a registered practical nurse can sign. Where the decision cannot be made from the application alone or from any additional information that staff has been able to gather with informed consent, the applicant is referred to a third party for functional assessment. We currently contract to Bayshore Healthcare for this purpose. There is no charge, of course, for the assessment, and transportation is provided free of cost to the appointment. So under the AODA, the categories of eligibility for service are defined as unconditional, that is, the person is not able to use HSR transportation at all, but can use DART safely or specialized transit, and can use specialized transit for all trips. Conditional eligibility means the person is able to use HSR buses under certain conditions. Seasonal eligibility goes from November 1st to April 30th, or for trip-by-trip eligibility, where a person can use DARTs to approved locations only. Temporary eligibility means a person is not able to use HSR buses due to a condition that is expected to improve and can use DARTs temporarily for all trips. Under the Integrated Accessibility Standard Regulation of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, these are the categories that are used, and the expectation is that they're used consistently across the province. This makes it easier to ensure that someone's eligibility in one jurisdiction is honored when they are traveling to another jurisdiction. For example, visitors attending medical care. In our experience, determinations of both unconditional or full eligibility are generally very clear, as are determinations of ineligibility, though we may encounter some more difficult decisions in the future. The majority of applicants for ATS are fully and unconditionally eligible. The number of applicants who are denied eligibility in a given year is very small. Our experience is that members of the community have a good understanding of the nature and purpose of specialized transit, and so far, the decision, my experience of denials is the decision is quite cut and dried and quite clear to the applicant upon explanation. It is the decisions of conditional eligibility, currently most of those are seasonal eligibility, that can be more challenging. And I think this is where we can anticipate seeing requests for appeal, as these may increase in the future, where persons are found conditionally eligible for a trip if the particular trip is not accessible, and ineligible for a trip if the trip conditions do not present a barrier for them. And trip conditions would include not only path of travel, but things like temperature, weather, and time of day. The few requests for appeal I have seen to date were from applicants who were found conditionally eligible for service during the winter months, who subsequently provided additional information from their healthcare provider that supported greater eligibility, and so we provided it. As we move in the direction of being able to set more conditions of eligibility, for example, distance to the closest accessible bus stop, we can expect to see more requests for appeal. So this is why a robust, clear, and fair process is important. So there have been no changes to the basic policy itself. Applicants have the right to appeal their eligibility decision. They can submit a form to do so. Appeals are reviewed by an appeal panel consisting of 3 members, a member of the Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disabilities, an occupational therapist or an orientation and mobility specialist, and a staff member of the city's Talent and Diversity section. And applicants may choose to bring or to send a representative. Important details have been added to ensure as much clear information as possible is provided to the applicant. It has been moved to a more prominent location on the Accessible Transportation Services webpage, and it explicitly includes the option to provide additional information, including information from the person's healthcare provider, and the option to participate in a third-party functional assessment ahead of time. And both of these options may result in an outcome that increases eligibility without the need to go to an appeal panel. So just a summary, this slide has a summary of the edits specific to accessibility for persons with, Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disabilities Transportation Working Group comments, as well as comments from city staff. We've updated the appeal form and the appeal notice of hearing. We've added an enclosure whenever an authorized representative has been named by the person who's filing an appeal. And we've crafted 2 different letters regarding outcomes with clear instructions for the person regarding their next steps, depending on whether the original decision was upheld or the original decision was amended. So next steps, the Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disabilities will decide how they will assign their members to participate on the panel. We will be reestablishing the panel, updating the panel terms of reference, and developing training for panel members. Recognizing that we do not yet have the panel completely established, the policy and the form still needed to be posted, the updated policy and form, because we do get occasional appeal requests, and accessing the process itself is the doorway into providing additional information, which may even preclude the need for an appeal. And under the legislation, if we are not yet sufficiently established to provide an appeal panel hearing within 30 days of a request, we would simply provide temporary eligibility until we were able to do so. The related procedure now includes a section that is specific to appeal panel training to cover ATS, the ATS application process, functional barriers on transit, relevant Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act sections, the regulations that are related to that, privacy and confidentiality, and ethics, for example, conflict of interest. So the detailed Accessible Transportation Services Policy document and the related procedure document for both accessible transportation services and for appeal panel members are now also captured as transit control documents, and so they will be reviewed at least every 3 years. As an accessible transportation services policy, this review will also include review with the Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disabilities. And I'll be pleased to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Martin. We're going to take a mover and second to receive your presentation. You can make your way back to the bench, and then we'll see for, I think we already have someone on the speakers list, so we definitely have some questions. Councillor Mark Taddison, Councillor Maureen Wilson, and we'll receive the presentation, then we'll open it up for questions.
Councillor Kretsch.
And that carries 14-0. Thank you. First up on the discussion, Councillor Mark Tattison.
Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate your inclusive efforts and the nature of your presentation. In it, what you did say was something along the lines of extensive consultation with the Transit Working Group from ACPD. I just wanted to ask a general question. In working through that progress with the group, can you share if there were any concerns that were raised that we're still working on in terms of getting it right for that group?
So the group is now specifically concerned with what their own participation on the panel will look like. And so we're currently working through that question. The concern was raised, and I believe this is actually part of the Transportation Working Group notes attached to the ACPD report. The concern was raised compensation for time and effort and energy spent as an appeal panel member, and so that is also being investigated.
Okay, thanks then. And then just one other, well, maybe two other questions. I'm seeing that there's terms of reference in terms of reestablishing the appeal panel, including updating the eligibility appeal panel terms, blah, blah, blah. My question, I guess, is, as you're developing that, do you have any idea of, who, when, and how that will be the party that will be training the people that sit on that panel?
Manager?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Right now, it will be myself and a member of the Access and Equity staff.
Councillor?
Talent and diversity, sorry.
Okay, and then just a general question. We do have an ATS subcommittee. Is that something that this committee could support in that, or is that outside the realm of that committee, the subcommittee?
Director?
Through the chair, that's outside of the scope of the ATS subcommittee.
Thank you very much for answering those questions. No more questions.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have anyone else on the speakers list. Okay. So we'll need a mover and seconder to receive the report. Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Tattison. Any discussion? I don't see any, so we'll go to the vote. And the vote is loading. That carries 14-0. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, Transit Maintenance and Storage Facility Project Update, PW 19006B. Director Cozen Heath is coming forward with our presentation.
This afternoon with a very brief project update on Transit's long-awaited and much-needed second maintenance and storage facility. As you know, this building represents a significant investment in transit and also a statement landmark that we're creating in Ward 3. So the second facility is being created for us, being constructed right now at 281 Birch Avenue in the Lower City. And in case you haven't seen the site in a while, the progress, this is an older picture of the site after all of the demolition of the predecessor buildings had been completed. And I think it gives a good idea of the vastness and size and scope of the infrastructure that we're creating there. Now we have in front of us the artist buildings, renderings of the building for what it's going to look like when it is all built out. There will be maintenance, fueling, and storage for 200 buses, plus space for an additional 100 buses in the future, an indoor CNG fueling station, an administration building, and parking structure. A reminder that our current facility is operating at close to 180% or greater, and once this site becomes operational, the existing Mountain Transit Centre is going to remain at 100% capacity, and this location will open at approximately 80% capacity day one. Project schedule, the work commenced in November of 2023. Our goal is full operations with the fall board in September of 2026. We are at 40% completion already, which is shocking considering that it's been sort of less than a year. And at the end of the day, the good news is we are on time, on budget, and we have a robust contingency still remaining. In terms of the project budget to date, we have experienced about $10.3 million worth of change orders, which, considering the magnitude of the facility and the scope, that the size of the land that we were building on as we got into demolition and excavation, not surprising to have change orders in the $10 million range. But the good news is the demolition is done, and we anticipate limited potential for additional unexpected land or site contamination. So this is what is happening now. So if you look at this photo, it is quite incredible. I've had an opportunity to be down there and tour the site in person. It is truly awesome when you see really how big this place is going to be. And what you'll see is we almost have a fully formed building, and that represents the maintenance and the bus storage portion of the project to date. It will be watertight by the end of second quarter of 2025. So this photograph highlights what's left to happen. So you can see that the maintenance building is virtually complete. You can see where the bus storage building is, and then you can highlight where the parking structure is still to be done, and the administrative area that is suspended connecting between the parking structure and into the maintenance building is work that is scheduled to take place in the next year or so. So ahead of us, an indoor slab on the floor for the bus storage area in 2024 by year's end. Our admin building starts in the late of this year. Completion of maintenance building and roof deck by Q4 of 2024. And then we will start work on the indoor fueling station in Q1 of 2025. And of course, for us in the transit division, now the biggest part of the project actually begins, and that is how do we run this thing in two locations. For some people that have worked at HSR for a very, very long time, they remember having two garages before. Our network and the number of staff we have, we're almost at 1,000 employees. Everything is substantially different in the way we operate day to day from what it was when it had two facilities prior to. So we need to be looking at our technical staffing structure, our management structure, splitting of the routes, a timed soft operating model, and then full functionality by fall board of 2026, which means as we navigate through some large construction seasons ahead of us, we are going to have frequent and plentiful detours as we are separating the routes between both facilities. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us to make this thing operational, but we're very excited and pleased with the progress so far. So for anybody who is more curious than I am about what is happening with this building, the project website is frequently updated. We have responded to some concerns of dust from constituents in the Ward 3 office, and I will say that the construction firm Pomerleau has been fantastic to deal with. They've been very responsive to ward concerns and have provided immediate remediation when any challenges have arisen. And there's also a dedicated project email, so if people have specific questions to the MSF, they can email a project staff member and we will respond with the information that they're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I will get a mover and seconder, and then we'll get to discussion. Councillor Nan, Councillor Taddison, and Councillor Nan, please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a comment of thanks to Director and her team in response to the Ward 3 residents. In slide 6, for those of you who saw it or have it open on your e-scribe, you can see the adjacent residential neighborhoods not being plentiful, just a few households, but there has been a lot of direct impact. You saw the amount of earth that is moving to create this massive facility. It has had some negative impact to those adjacent residential neighbors, and our city staff team have been responsive to those points, and more importantly, putting those residents directly in touch with the contractor so that there can be a better monitoring of the issue as it continues. And Chair, I don't know if you've had a chance to go by, but I parked my car on that residential street and just kind of walked by to get the scale and magnitude of the work. And it is quite massive and quite impressive when we think about the city investment, not only in terms of transforming this space into what it is going to serve in terms of transit for our city going forward, but also it is an opportunity to remediate portions of the industrial north end in Ward 3 that a much more pleasant use of space to adjacent neighbors and adjacent neighbors as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. Anyone else? Councillor Pauls, go ahead.
Thank you, and wow, I can't believe how fast this 2023 you started a few months ago, and it's almost there. I just want to ask for the project budget. We awarded costs 331 million, change order 10 million. Are you anticipating more change orders?
Director?
Through the chair, there's always the opportunity for change orders as you're working on a multi-year project of this size and magnitude. We do know that we are done the demolition, we're done most of the soil work, so we don't necessarily anticipate any more change orders related to the early phase of the project, but there are opportunities always that change orders will be required as we move forward.
Thank you, and again, congratulations. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. I don't have anyone else on the speakers list, so we will go to the vote. The vote is up. That carries 14-0. Thank you. Moving on to discussion items, 11.1, HSR Transcab in-house bid for 2024 request for tenders, RFT PW 24055, wards 9, 10, and 11. Busy day for you, Director. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce to committee today Nick Shalou. Nick has joined the HSR team as the Manager of Strategic Planning. He had previously been the Senior Project Manager in that division and has ascended to the managerial position. This is Nick's first public meeting, so please be kind to him, but he's going to walk you through the Transcab report.
Welcome, Nick. We'll try to take it easy on you.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Director. Very excited to be here for my first committee meeting. So I'm here to speak on Transcab. We have a report in front of us for our upcoming request for tenders. For those who aren't aware, Transcab is our on-demand transit service that operates in Stony Creek and Glanbrook, where riders can use a taxi to connect to the fixed route service at specific locations. Our current contract is due to end at the end of October. With our collective agreement with Local 107 of the ATU, we do have a letter of understanding on alternate service delivery. This letter has been in place since 1998 and provides our union the right to submit a bid to deliver unconventional transit service like Transcab. This letter also states that the contract be awarded to the ATU if their bid is within 10% of the lowest private sector bid. Per our city's procurement policy, we do need to come to council for approval prior to the preparation and submission of an in-house bid. And this bid also, we have to provide some details on who is part of the in-house committee and what benefits and exceptions they get for the in-house bid. This is all in the report. We have also procured a fairness monitor to oversee this process because of the in-house bid, HSR procured P1 Consulting to oversee the request for tenders. They will also submit a report documenting the fairness and transparency of the process that will come back to council as we get the outcomes of the RFT. As a result, we're here today to recommend that the Director of Procurement be authorized and directed to issue the RFT for the next term of Transcab service, that we're authorized and directed to establish an in-house bid team, and that staff report back to committee with recommendations on the results of the procurement process as soon as it finishes. Because of Policy 22 and our collective agreement, there are no other suitable alternatives for consideration.
Thank you, Manager. You seem like a pro, so it might be your first time, but good job. Mover and seconder, Councillor Beatty, you move that? Councillor Tattison, seconder. Councillor Beatty, you're on the list.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Welcome, Nick, and right into the hot seat over Transcab. For those around the table not as familiar, Transcab's been something in place in the Stoney Creek community since the late 90s. And initially, I think its uptake was very well received, but it's faced some challenges as of late. And I know that I think the primary thrust of the motion is seeking the authorization for the internal bid, but I'm wondering if it would be okay if I could just get a few clarifying questions over the entire procurement process, if that's okay, Chair? Okay. And really, I'm just trying to see through you, Chair, if this entire bidding process is an opportunity that we might be able to address some of the deficiencies in the current program that have been identified. I know that HSR staff are well aware of some of those deficiencies that have been identified. My office is certainly aware of some of the deficiencies. So when we go out to tender, are we looking to try to address some of these service delivery concerns? Is there anything that you might be able to speak of for the users of the program within the Stoney Creek area?
Manager?
So through the chair, one of the big focuses in the updated RFT is improving data collection and gathering. We've had challenges in the past getting accurate data from our vendors that will help us track the nature of the service, how well it's performing, and make interventions sooner as they happen. That said, the overall service model for Transcab is not changing with this procurement. This is intended to be our last Transcab procurement before we transition to a MyRide style service in the next few years.
Councillor Beatty?
That transitions very nicely to my next question. Am I able to ask what is the length of the contract that we're seeking on this? Through you, Chair.
Manager?
Through the chair, the RFT is written for one-year term periods. The first term would start November 1st, 2024, assuming the procurement is released on time. We will have, right now, there's 2 additional terms written in. HSR is going to increase that through discussion prior to this meeting just to add a bit of protection.
Through you, Chair, a follow-up question to that, and I think it might be a moot question, but I'll ask it anyways. I know that we're envisioning a transition into the MyRide system. ASAP would be the acronym I would use because I'm very much looking forward to that, particularly along the Stoney Creek Lakeshore area, north of the QEW, kind of still separated by no fixed transit, not yet any sidewalks over the bridges, those kinds of things. If MyRide became available more quickly, through some miracle that we were able to unfold this program in a more rapid pace, is there a mechanism that would allow us to transition more quickly out of the Transcab contract and not face penalty or something like that? I wouldn't want the Transcab contract get in the way of rolling out this new MyRide program in the Stoney Creek area. Through you, Chair.
Director?
Thank you, through the chair. The contract period, if we're in the contract period, we would be limited with what we could do to step outside of a contracted arrangement. So that's why we're going in short segments.
Okay, sounds like you're planning ahead, and I appreciate that. Just a final question, comment. The director knows that I'm very, very keen on trying to find those interregional connections, either to our friends and partners in the Niagara region through the Niagara Region Transit System or into the GO system at some point. Is there any anticipation that this might be used as a stepping off point for interregional transit? Or is there any consideration when we go out for an RFT that might aid us for future connections on this?
Through the chair, we are in conversations with MTO, Metrolinx, and Niagara Region Transit on integration. The most practical action coming of that is Winona Crossing will have a bay protected for Niagara Transit use. But in this particular connection between Hamilton and Niagara, it's about 10 kilometers over to Grimsby, the vast majority of which is in Niagara Region. So the benefits are more to Niagara in this case, and we'd be looking to our partners to help deliver that service.
That's at least something that I will build upon that. So thank you very much, Nick. Great job. And thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Beatty. Up next, Ward 6, Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair Spatafora. And I met Manager Chaloux long before the rest of you did today.
I would hope so. Go.
Thank you. Back at our town hall meeting up on the East Mountain back in February, and did a great job with other HSR staff to explain the future of the blast network, and especially the T-line that was planned for the East Mountain area. So good to see Nick again. I've always supported, where possible, Chair Spatafora, in-house bids. Over the years, last 20, 25 years, we've had in-house bids for water services, which now we have permanently. There was a time when the in-house bid from the Recreation Department was put forward to possibly manage, operate certain facilities in our community. So I'm always open-minded. All I want to do is to current partners and those in the private sector, if I support this approval today for the Local 107, to have the ability and legal opportunity to bid, that the current providers still have the ability to bid as well. Just want that confirmation. Through you, Chair Spatafora, to Manager Chaloux.
Director.
Through the chair, yes, everybody has the opportunity to bid.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Taddison.
Hey, Nick, welcome to the bench. Can I just get your official title as a manager?
Sure, through the chair, it's Manager of Transit Strategy and Planning.
Well, thank you. I'll just call you manager for now. Is that okay? At the end of your report, it basically says there are no suitable alternatives for consideration. Just throwing it out there because that's the guy I am. Would an alternative be that we not do an internal bid? Would that be an alternative?
Feel free not to catch that one if you don't want, Manager.
Through the chair, if we did not have the ability to do an in-house bid, we'd be in violation of our collective agreement.
Okay, I get that now. Thank you. And thank you for Councillor Wilson for whispering that to me and helping me show how far behind I am as I try to catch up here. Okay, then, my last question then is, there were issues that the councillor from Winona brought up and basically said that, you know, looking at will, and I guess my question then is going to be, is it beneficial for the city to be running Transcab as we transition to MyRide?
Director.
Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Taddison, for the question. It's a intermission. It's a measure that we're taking to get to where we want to go, because we can't get to our desired state as quickly as we would like to, so we can't have a service gap.
Okay. I'll take it offline when I come up to visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taddison. No one else on the speakers list. We have a mover and seconder. We'll go to the vote. So That carries 14-0. Moving on to motions, 12.1, Lake Point Park Playground and Sun Shelter Replacement, 60 West Hampton Way, Stony Creek, Hamilton, Ward 10. Councillor Bleedy, please introduce your motion and your seconder.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Mark Taddison from Bimbrook. This is with regards to the Lake Point Playground and Sun, you've got me doing it now, Chair, thank you. The shelter replacement. For the benefit of committee, the Sun Shelter at the Lake Point Park unfortunately burned down in early 2023. We've been waiting for the process to come full circle where we were in a position to be able to move forward with the replacement. Along the way, our friends at Landscape Architectural Services identified a need for a multi-use court, and we're now bundling the Sun Shelter replacement with the multi-use court and taking advantage of this opportunity to also upgrade the playground. So it ends up being a nice 3-for-1 deal. Whereas the Lake Point Park is a 2.9 acre neighborhood park located at 60 West Hampton Way, whereas the existing playground in the park is nearing the end of its life. The existing Sun Shelter was destroyed by a fire in May 2023, whereas Landscape Architectural Services is currently undertaking the design and installation of a multi-use court within the park, and combining these asset replacement projects would benefit the overall design and programming. And whereas the insurance proceeds for the replacing of the shade structure are based on a like kind and quality replacement, and as a result, enhancements to be made when replacing the shelter, and proceeds will not be available to cover the full cost of the new shade structure in its entirety. It is estimated that the new structure and associated works will be approximately $150,000, and there's currently no capital funding available to cover the remaining expenses. And whereas the GFL Stony Creek Compensation Royalty Reserve supports community investment within the boundaries of the former city of Stony Creek, and this aligns with the work associated with the playground replacement, therefore be it resolved that the replacement of the playground and Sun Shelter be added to the 2025 scope of work for Lake Point Park Multi-Use Court Project ID 4402456135. And in order to minimize impacts on the park, reduce the impact on staffing resources, and to ensure the park assets are looked at with a holistic approach, and that the replacement of the playground at Lake Point Park, 60 West Hampton Way, be funded by the GFL Stony Creek Compensation Royalty Reserve 117036 at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $250,000, be approved, and that the replacement of the Sun Shelter at the Lake Point Park on West Hampton Way receive additional funding from the Ward 10 non-property tax account reserve 330160960 at an upset limit not to exceed $100,000 to bridge any funding gap between the insurance proceeds and the project cost be approved, and that the general manager of public works or designate be authorized and directed to approve and execute any and all required agreements and ancillary documents in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. In a mouthful. Hoping for full approval, Chair, and would very much like to get this project underway for 2025.
Sounds good. First up, Councillor Wang.
Just a clarification question. In the whereas statements, it says 150,000, but then in your therefore be resolved, it says not to exceed 250,000 plus a replacement Sun Shelter from the non-property tax revenue of 100,000. So is this costing 350,000 or is it 150,000?
Councillor Beatty.
I believe, Councillor Wang, that what we're referring to is that the shade structure is $150,000. The playground structure is $250,000. And we have two different reserves being accessed to supplement these two different projects. Be it the GFL reserve for $250,000 and the non-property tax reserve for $100,000 as an upset limit. I think what it comes down to is we're not fully aware of what the replacement value being issued by the insurer is as of yet. We're trying to put in place a contingency to cover the additional costs on the Sun Shelter.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Seeing no one else on the list, we'll go to the vote. That carries 14-0. Looks like you get your sun shelter, Councillor Beatty. Up next, 12.2 Inch Park Inclusive Play Space, 400 Queensdale Avenue East, Hamilton, Ward 7. Councillor Pauls, please introduce your motion, and I understand Councillor Maureen Wilson will be seconding.
Yes, she will, and I chose her because I know Councillor Wilson loves parks. And also, this park is an inclusive park for all abilities, and I know she cares about that. So as I was thinking who to use, I called the councillor, and she was thrilled to, and I appreciate that, and thank you very much. I've been talking about this park now, I think, for 5 years, since my last term. I'm going to read my motion because it tells all. I'm so excited about it, and the reason I want to start this year, the real reason is because you know that the costs go up every year. And this park started at 1.4 million, now it's just over 2 million. And I think we need to start now, because I don't want to have another notice saying it's an extra 500,000 or $1 million. So we're going to start in October, which is exciting. So I'll read the motion. And thank you, Councillor Wilson, thank you. Okay, whereas Inch Park is a community park that is 4.7 hectares in size, and it's located within Inch Park neighborhood at 400 Queensdale Avenue East. The existing amenities of Inch Park, 400 Queensdale, includes an indoor ice skating arena with public washrooms, a fence, outdoor wading pool with beach entry, indoor changing rooms, 2 parking lots, 2 tennis courts, 6 balls diamond, a batting cage, 2 sun shelters, paved pathways, and a playground. Whereas the Hamilton Challenger Baseball Association, which is now, I have to give notice that it's changing its name to Hamilton Challenger Sport Baseball Association, hosts junior and senior sports programs and social activities at Inch Park, 400 Queensdale Avenue, for players with special needs and their families and friends. And when I said there are over 500 players. Whereas the City of Hamilton has a history of investing in accessible amenities at Inch Park, with the aim of making the park inclusive for all users, which focus the needs of Hamilton Challenger Sport Association members. Whereas the existing playground within Inch Park is at the end of its service life and needs to be replaced. Whereas 2023 landscape architect service completed public stakeholder engagement to proceed and design a new playground at Inch Park that is radically inclusive, physically, socially, and emotionally inviting for all, and a park within a park, and carefully designed, high-quality play space with a focus on accessibility amenities that will be recreational destination both for local Inch Park residents and those traveling for other afield in search of fun, inclusive play experience. Whereas the radically inclusive play space will be unique in Hamilton and will be an asset to the residents citywide. The construction of the inclusive park space is planned for 2025 and is estimated to cost $2,500,000. Wherefore, through the 2024 capital budget process, the Ward 7 Council contributed $1 million from the Ward 7 Capital Reinvestment Reserve, number 108057, to support this inclusive play space project. An additional $427,000 was allocated to the project from Development Charges Reserve. And the Hamilton Challenge Sport Association is a registered Canadian charity that is actively fundraising and applying for a grant funding to contribute money to the inclusive play space project. Therefore, let it be resolved that Inch Park Inclusive Place Space Project, number 4402256113, receive an additional $1 million in funding from Ward 7 Capital Reinvestment Reserve 108057 in 2024 to support the development of inclusive play space in Hamilton, and that any future fundraising efforts in support of this project will be used to offset the Ward 7 Capital Reinvestment Reserve funding allotted and returned to the Ward 7 Capital Investment Reserve 108057, and the general manager, Public Works, or designated be authorized and directed to approve and execute any and all requirement agreements and accessory documents in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. I just want to say that the Hamilton Change Baseball Association, they are actively trying to get sponsors, and already there are $125,000. And I am sure when people in the community and know about this project, they will jump in and support it. So I am thrilled to know that I know that it's starting in October, and by 2025, the fall of 2025, it should be all ready and done. So I'm looking forward, and like I said, it's for all wards. It's for all of Hamilton. It's going to be a destination park. If you want to see the tender, go on the City of Hamilton website and find out. It is beautiful. I was going to bring the pictures here, but I left them in my office. So please go and see one of the best parks in Hamilton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you. It's always hard to beat Councillor Paul's enthusiasm. I just want to thank her for her leadership and commitment to this and keeping her shoulder to the wheel, because it's absolutely in her wheelhouse of health and safety and inclusion, particularly for children and particularly for public space, which is a space where we can all come together and recognize the unique abilities of all people, particularly children, and the journey that we're on to get to a place where it won't be so radical. It will just be the norm. But we know that takes time, but we have to start somewhere, and the leadership and the showcase that this is going to present to all of us to see what is possible, I think is brilliant. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Seeing no one else on the speakers list, we will go to the vote. Councillor McMeekin is a thumbs up. And that carries 14-0. Thank you. Moving on to notices of motion, 13.1, Keith Neighborhood Collision Review and Complete Streets Enhancements, Ward 3. Councillor Nam, please introduce your notice of motion, and will you be seeking to waive the rules?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will be seeking to waive the rules, and my seconder is Councillor Maureen Wilson. So first up on that, I am seeking to waive the rules, and for my committee colleagues, the reason being the unexpected nature of the incident requires it to be. Thank you.
Okay. No one on the speakers list, so we will go to the vote to waive the rules, please. That carries 14-0. Councillor Nam, please introduce your motion.
Thank you. It's moved by myself and again seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson. Whereas the City of Hamilton Vision Zero Action Plan 2019-2025 identifies that no loss of life is acceptable and that traffic fatalities and injuries are preventable. And whereas ensuring the safety of vulnerable road users is a priority. And whereas on September 10th, 2024, an 11-year-old was waiting for a school bus on Emerald Street North and was struck by a driver and suffered life-altering injuries. Whereas the Hamilton Police Services are actively investigating the traffic collision, and whereas the Transportation Division has conducted a complete street study for Ward 3 that includes proposed recommendations for the Keith neighborhood, And whereas Ward 3 residents in the Keith neighborhood have and continue to express traffic safety concerns, therefore be it resolved, A, that the Transportation Division, with the assistance of Hamilton Police Services and the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, whose membership includes the public school boards, emergency services, and public health, collectively review the conditions of the collision and report back to the Ward 3 office with any recommendations based on their findings, and B, that the Transportation Division implement the proposed recommendations in the Ward 3 Complete Street Study for the Keith neighborhood, as well as action the findings and recommendations from the collision review as a priority. Chair, as I mentioned at council this Wednesday, it is in response to the unfortunate accident that took place last Tuesday that has left an 11-year-old neighbor in the Keith neighborhood with life-altering injuries. Nobody expects their kid to be waiting at a school bus stop and have this occur. To our young neighbor, to her family, to her loved ones, to her neighbors, to have to pick up the pieces from this kind of incident, but also find faith and find a sense of security again in our neighborhood is going to take multiple steps. Part of that is healing for the person who's been directly impacted, but part of it is also healing as a community and a neighborhood. And that includes hearing very clearly and without any delay a commitment by the municipality to do this kind of review. And it does lead me to ask a question to Director Rael as per whether or not there is a citywide standard of safety when it comes to school bus stops, recognizing that the city doesn't control the locations of those bus stops. Sometimes those bus stop locations change based on the contract between the school boards and their school bus company. However, it occurs that there should be some standards. And so if I could, through you to Director Rael, anything that you can offer in terms of insight on whether or not that exists.
Director Rael?
Through the chair, good question, Councillor. Carolyn Ryle, Director of Transportation. So I am not aware of any standard that exists currently within transportation. And I think the key next step with us is meeting with the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee. It has representatives all across the municipality, but also emergency services, both school boards, as well as a number of staff within the city across planning and transportation. So we'll be taking it back to review it. I would assume the school boards, in working with the bus provider, do have a standard, but we will be reviewing that as part of the next steps, and we'll bring that back as an update to your office as per the motion.
Thank you, appreciate that. And Chair, for some of my council colleagues who are new to this term, the Ward 3 office was one of 3 wards that had a comprehensive complete streets review done. Really pleased with the process and also the comprehensive nature of the recommendations. Unlike some of my colleagues, I don't have to move individual motions seeking speed cushions because that is built into our comprehensive plan of action for the entire ward. And my allocation of funds in the previous term are carrying over into this term in terms of being able to implement those recommendations year after year. So with that said, when the report back does come back from staff, there might be a subsequent motion on my part to allocate even more funding to ensure that the Keith neighborhood gets its wraparound implementation of all the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. I don't see any more speakers on the list, so we will go to the vote. And that carries 14-0. Councillor Nan, thoughts and prayers with the family and the entire Keith neighborhood. Moving on to item 14, actually, no, we have one more notice of motion. My apologies. Councillor Tattison, please introduce your notice, and is it staying as a notice?
The answer is yes. So this notice of motion is about safely accelerating the implementation of optic fiber cable on Hamilton roads through provincial and federal programs where the current service doesn't meet the standard 50-10 service level. What I have come to understand now is that A simple ask is not so simply implemented. So as a counselor, I just want to state that I do understand the awesome responsibility it is to protect the city from risk, and I appreciate the support and thank Director Jackie Kennedy and the growth management team in working with me on this motion. I'll leave it as a notice of motion so I can allow my fellow councilors time to run through the 6 pages of details, as we just finalized some of them this morning. And I'll just say this, I think as I struggle through this, I see the city in a position where what we can't do currently is stopping us from what we could do in realizing significant growth in connectivity infrastructure over the next 2 years. So to my fellow colleagues, please look at this and consider supporting this in the future for the overall betterment of all of Hamilton. Thank you very much for that consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Taddison. General information or other business, we have nothing on the list. Does anyone here have any items? Seeing none, we're going to move on to private and confidential. 15.1, transit maintenance and storage facility, policy 11, contract administration fee increase, Arcadis Professional Services Canada, Inc., PW 19006B, citywide. May I please have a mover and seconder to move into closed session? Councillor Jackson, Councillor Kassar, respecting item 15.1 pursuant to section 9.3 subsection K of the City Procedural Bylaw 21-021 and section 2392 subsection K of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as a subject matter pertains to a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the city or a local board. Please vote. That carries 14-0. Members of the public are advised that during the closed session portion of the meeting, the live stream will broadcast a closed session in progress screen. The broadcast will resume when the closed session portion of the meeting is complete, as we are now moving into closed session. I would ask all members of the public, delegates, and external participants to please now exit the WebEx meeting. As well, any staff that are not directly related to the in-camera items are also now asked to please exit the WebEx meeting. I also remind committee members that as per section 8.7 of the procedural bylaw, the use of personal electronic devices during closed meetings is strictly prohibited. However, the use of city electronic devices during closed meetings are limited to text communication only, with the city's electronic devices not being used as a telephone, recording device, or camera. Staff from the Office of the City Clerk are exempted from subsection 8.7C when using electronic devices for record-keeping purposes. Members of committee, we are now back in open session. Moving on to item 15.1, Transit Maintenance and Storage Facility Policy 11 Contract Administration Fee Increase, Arcadis Professional Services Canada, Inc., PW 19006B, citywide. May I have a mover and second to receive the report and that it remain confidential? Councillor Cassar, Councillor Beatty, and we will require an electronic vote. And that carries 11-2. Thank you. Moving on to adjournment, may I please have a mover and seconder to adjourn? Councillor McMeekin, Councillor Taddison. We will have a vote.
Councillor Cratch?
I'm in favor. My e-scribe's just angry. I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
That carries 13-0. Thank you, committee members. Thank you, staff. Thank you, clerks. Have a good day.